Um, I'd like to introduce Swami Tyagarupananda from Malda. Now, I know you all know exactly where Malda is, because I did. When he walked in, I said, "Where is Malda?" I honestly thought it was an island. No, I thought it was in the Maldives. I really had no idea. It's in Bengal, on the mainland. And Swami is very kindly stopped to visit us and give us a talk on Holy Mother. So he joined the order in 1985 in Ranchi and took sannyas in 1995. He's been in educational institutes in India for the rest of the time. He's been in Deoghar, he's been in Bellarmont, he's been in Malda. And I found a little bit more out about him. He's got an advanced degree in economics, which is really helpful when you're running a center. And he's been speaking around the world. He's had many speaking engagements in Dubai, I've forgotten the others, but in many of the centers around the world. So we're very, very lucky to have him with us tonight. Swami Tyagarupananda from Malda, which is not an island.
लज्जापटावृते नित्यं सारदे ज्ञानदायिके पापेभ्यो नः सदा रक्ष मातृभ्यां च नमः नमः. So this is the introductory verse that Swami Chaitananandaji has quoted from the Chandi or Devi Mahatmyam to start off with the chapter Holy Mother with Western Women. Just to tell you the meaning of this sloka before we venture into the main talk, it says, one who with her veil of modesty, lajja pata abrita, abrita is covered, with the veil of modesty, lajja, nityam, ever. Let her protect us from the deviations, our diversions, sins. We bow down to her again and again. So I am fortunate to be allowed to speak on this dais, and revered Mataji is here, Krishna Pranaji, Vraja Pranaji, both have taken great care to see that my short stay here is amiable and enjoyable as well. We also see the devotees assembled on a Sat Eve, as they said, right? So it's a time for recuperation and enjoyment, and I thank you all those who have taken time to arrive here. So I will just give you a brief outline before starting this talk on Nivedita, the Holy Mother, that is Ma Sarada. Actually, Swami Vivekananda, when he first came to the US in 1893, he was pleasantly surprised to see the independence of women here. Their independent spirit, they're able to participate in different spheres of life. Even in the Parliament of Religions, there were a number of women officials as well. Say Mrs. Potter Palmer was one of them. And it was this Parliament of Religions that made him known to Mrs. S.K. Blodgett. Mrs. S.K. Blodgett was one who from a distance watched this young monk gradually like a sun on the stage, engulfing others as it were. In fact, she makes a humorous remark. When Swamiji had started with this short lecture and finished it within a few minutes, that famous lecture, Brothers and Sisters of America, scores of women, the reminiscences say, they went near the podium to pay their respects to him, love and respects. To Mrs. Blodgett, she remarks that I said in my mind, "Oh young man, if you can withstand this onslaught of women, you are indeed a conqueror." And then Swamiji stayed in America for some years, and during his second visit, he stayed at the house of Mrs. S.K. Blodgett in this state, that is, in the state of California. And it was in this state again that in South Pasadena in 1900 that he stayed for about a month in the house of the Mead sisters. Three of them very much beloved of the Swami, especially Mrs. Alice Hansborough. To them, their devoted service and their putting no restrictions on him whatsoever, right? Because he was a free soul. Allowing him to go along the way as a lion does. And he, on his part, watched the women, their family from within, and how the American society gradually unfurled in that last leg of the 19th century. So, Swamiji, when comparing India, felt again and again that the women of the land, that is India, should be properly educated. He reminded himself it was not that women did not have the highest educations earlier. He was reminded of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where Yagyavalka is determined to go to the forest, to the hermitage. And then in that wonderful story that Swamiji was very fond of, Yagyavalka calls his two wives. One was Katyayani and the other was Maitreyi. And he told them, "Well, I have decided to retire and will like to divide my property amongst you two." The Upanishad remarks, well, among them Katyayani was the usual type, worldly type. So she was very happy at this prospect. But Maitreyi, she questioned, well, getting this property, can I be mortal? Kimaham amritasyam? Yagyavalka then lodged into his discussion on the life hereafter, of the immortal Atman, for knowing which you must go beyond the senses, beyond the ephemeral enjoyments of the cravings of worldly pleasures. So, Swamiji would remark again and again that in India the highest knowledge was open to women as well. They had the equal rights like Maitreyi, like Gargi, to the highest education, highest knowledge, even the religious ones. In fact, in India, you have that wonderful book Chandi, or it's also known as Devi Mahatmyam, in which you see the glory of the Divine Mother. In India, you have plenty of goddesses being worshipped, right? In fact, in Vedanta it's said that the potential form of God is Brahman, and in its kinetic form, she takes the form of Shakti, power. And the Shakti is imagined as a woman. So you see women deities in different parts of India, especially in the eastern part. You see Bhavatarani, Durga, Annapurna, Jagadhatri, etc. In fact, it was to the credit of Sri Ramakrishna that in the 19th age, he riveted the attention of the society of the time once again to this doctrine of divine mother worship. As we were discussing that day at Hollywood, that it was gradually getting a bad name, Tantrika worship, because some of the ill practices that had crept into it. But Sri Ramakrishna, by his purifying acts, by his acts of divinity or religious worships, cleansed the dross out of Tantrikism and established the worship of the Divine Mother on a new pedestal fit for the modern age. In fact, he capped this worship by offering in 1872, almost at the fag end of his worship, all the fruits of his sadhana, penances, to the feet of his married wife, Sarada Devi. This observance, known as the Shodashi Puja, supposed to be performed in a married wife when she has turned 16, that is, when she has turned an adult. Then Sri Ramakrishna, uttering the mantras, said, "O Devi, you open yourself up and take all these fruits of my sadhana." Sarada, much junior to age, she was 18 years of old, lay quiet, sitting on the stool. And Sri Ramakrishna, one after another, did as the 16-item worship, as it is also performed in this monastery, right? He did the nyasa. Nyasa, this ceremony means putting the divine words, the varnas, the alphabets, on different parts of the body. In Sanskrit, the alphabet starts with akara, the vowels. The vyanjana starts with ka varna. So on the different parts of our limbs, on the hand, on the foot, on the hand you have 5 places at the different joints. You put the 5 alphabets of a varga, of a class. Thus, on the different parts of the body, you put the different alphabets. That is symbolical. Because alphabets are treated as very pure. Why? Because it is through the alphabets that the different words are formed. Words are basically combinations of the different alphabets. And through the alphabets and from them the words, you come to the thing per se. So Vedanta says that nama and rupa are inseparable. Name and form are inseparable. So when you utter a name, you immediately remember the thing or the person, right? So these different names which signify the things all around can boil down to the alphabets. So these alphabets, say 26 in English, contain the essence of all bhava, all thoughts, because by these words you point out to the things all around. It goes ahead and says, you see, through these alphabets, you can also utter the name of God. So alphabets are considered as pure. When you do a nyasa, you must have seen this being done during the pujas. When you put the fingers of the hand on different parts of the body, that is known as nyasa. In Sanskrit, etymologically, it means properly throwing a thing. Sannyasi, nyasa, right? So as you put the different alphabets on the different parts of the body, your body, as it were, becomes purified, becomes fit for a worship. So Sri Ramakrishna on that day, as per the norms of worship, did the nyasa when he did the worship of his married wife. And when at the end of his puja, he offered all his practices. He has been doing strenuous practices all these years, right? Just to recollect them, he started with the Divine Mother worship, and in course of time, he did the Advaita Sadhana, non-dualistic penances under Totapuri, and then he did the Vaishnava sadhanas as well. Vaishnava is which follow the line of Vishnu, where God is imagined to be a creator male God, right? And in the Vaishnava sadhana, there are different sub-streams as well. The most difficult of them is the Madhura Bhava. Madhura Bhava is where the worshipper or the sadhaka considers himself to be a lover of God. Well, so such practices have been prevalent elsewhere as well, even in Christianity. Swami Yogananda, in his book Autobiography of a Yogi, mentions such a sadhika in Europe, where the worshipper or sadhika considered her to be one with Jesus. So it's not that Madhura Bhava was prevalent only in Hinduism. The idea that you consider yourself to be one with God, a lover of God, makes you the most intimate devotee of God. As you climb along the steps of devotion, this Madhura Bhava is the highest of them all. So Sri Ramakrishna, he had treaded this path of Vaishnava religion as well. In fact, he also did the Ramayit sadhana. As you remember, when a person with a small statue of Ramachandra, Ram Lala it is known as, Lala is a small boy. He had brought it to Dakshineshwar, that sadhaka, and lo, this stone image of Ram Lal, the boy Rama, would again and again, the sadhaka from outside would see, who had brought the Ram Lala image with him, he would see that this Ram Lala doesn't want to remain with him any longer. It wants to go to Ramakrishna. And it so happened that finally the sadhaka who had come along from outside, initially with a bit of remorse and then happily, because after all the happiness of Ram Lala was his concern, left it back at Dakshineshwar. So that even when you go to Dakshineshwar today, you can see in a small cubicle, in a small niche, the statue of Ram Lala. So this wide variety of sadhana he had done. Not content with this Hindu practices, he had ventured into Islamic practices, even obtaining a formal mantra diksha for that purpose from a Sufi gentleman with the name Govinda Rai. And finally, which is quite relevant in this land, it is that he did Christian sadhana as well. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, as the biography very meticulously describes, that he had a darshan of Jesus as well. In fact, the biographer Swami Saradanandaji, an erudite scholar of Christian literature, because he had studied at the St. Xavier's College, he mentions Sri Ramakrishna telling them that he saw Jesus Christ with the usual complexion of an Asian Israelite, tall, fair, but with his nose slightly flat on the surface, right? So Sardanji mentions with very candidly, he said, well, we thought, well, in a darshana, well, in a bhava, probably you do not watch all those things that meticulously, right? Because we have always watched Israelites having long noses with beautiful aquiline features. How come that they could have a flat nose? Because Jesus, after all, was born a Jew in Israel. But Saradanji said that in later days, we came across a view that there were multiple versions of the physical form of Jesus Christ. Because in those days, you didn't have a photo, right? So in those, among them, one was there an opinion which said that Jesus had a somewhat closed nose, that is, a nose which was somewhat flat on the surface. So Sri Ramakrishna, the darshan went like this, that he saw a fair complexioned person coming in Panchavati towards him. First of all, he watched him and saw his godly appearance, and he wondered who it was. And then as he came still nearer, he narrated later on, then a voice within me said, this is Jesus Christ, who has sacrificed for all, who has even sacrificed his whole life, his own life, for the sake of others, had been crucified. And finally, this form that he had seen in a vision went and disappeared in him. Sri Ramakrishna would say in later days that because of such darshana, specifically he said about these darshanas, that probably this was why I too had to suffer pain in later days. He specifically mentions Sita and others, because they had borne the sufferings of others. In Christianity we say about vicarious atonement, right? The suffering for the works done by others, vicarious for others, substituting for others. So he also is supposed to have borne the works, the effects of works done by others. But that was somewhat a later story. In 1872, during this Shodashi Puja, he surrendered all these fruits of labor of his penances to the feet of Sarada Devi. Barely 18 years of age, Sarada Devi went back to her room. And then from Dakshineshwar, the scenario moves to Kashipur, where Sri Ramakrishna spent his last days. As cancer gradually caught on him, in spite of all the efforts of the doctors, the disease, which is intractable even today, naturally was still less known in 1886. And he became mere skin and bones. In fact, that photo of Sri Ramakrishna when he died, it's available, but it's normally not displayed. You can see that where his disciples Narendranath and others stand behind, and Sri Ramakrishna's body is in front lying. Because he couldn't eat properly, he could only eat what was liquid and what was smashed, what was made into a paste for him. But even then, on his very deathbed, he could never pray for his own well-being, right? Even when his disciples entreated him again and again that he could pray to the Divine Mother for his own wealth, for his own health, for his well-being, then he said, no, I can't do this. The mother said that I am having my sustenance through so many mouths. How could I pray for my own well-being? This is easier said than done, right? When you are on deathbed affected with cancer, when nothing passes down your throat, feeling that others are taking my food on behalf of me, I think it's a difficult proposition. And this is what Sri Ramakrishna did. and these young boys around watching him from close quarters, again and again testing him, right? Is he really the Paramahansa that we hear? Is he really that qualified to be finally called a God man? These were the days. The days when they realized what religion is. Religion is not merely in books. It was during this time that he once called Sarada Devi and said, you see, these people of Calcutta are crawling like worms. This is what he said, right? Hard words. Pokar moto kilbil kotche. Crawling like worms. You must do something for them. Sarada Devi, alarmed because she would normally stay behind veils. At Dakshineshwar, the officials of Dakshineshwar would say that, well, we have seen Sarada Devi, we have heard about Sarada Devi, but we have never seen her. Because such was her routine that she would never go outside to be visible by others, especially the males, right? To such a lady, his wife, Sri Ramakrishna, gives the responsibility of carrying spirituality. To whom? The educated men, the urban people, right? So Sarada Devi, she is alarmed. She says, how can I do that? Sri Ramakrishna entreats her and says, শুধু আমাকেই করতে হবে? Should I go on doing it alone? তুমি কি কিছু করবে না? Will you not do anything? So Sarada Devi could only keep quiet, right? Days passed on. Sarada Devi, after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, for a period lost interest in life. She went to places of pilgrimage. She went to Vrindavan, known for the divine sport of Krishna. She went to Varanasi. And in those days, in that period, she was so engrossed in the thought of her just departed godly husband that she thought it was time to leave the body as well. Remember, she was barely 33 years of age when Sri Ramakrishna passed away. And she would live for 33 more years. As it were, this demise of Sri Ramakrishna was like a tiffin break in the middle, right? During a long class hours in school, you have a tiffin break, right? Lunch break. So for Sarada Devi, this demise of Sri Ramakrishna marked the beginning of a new chapter. It was during this period that the baby Radha Rani was born. Actually, Sarada Devi had 4 brothers. Of them, Abhay Charan, he was the only man, only person rather, to be educated properly. He was studying in a medical college in Calcutta. In those days, people would be married off early. And when he was in the 3rd year of the college, when his wife was about to give birth to the baby, Abhay Charan sadly passed away. His wife Surabala gave birth to a baby, and the aunt Sarada watches that this baby is crawling on the ground. And this aunt, by that time, she has already become a bit deranged, Surabala. That is what he remained for the remaining period of her life. She walks ahead, her sari, her attire, all on the ground. And this baby crawling behind. No one to care for the baby. A motherly heart creeps up, wells up within Sarada. She feels for that child. And suddenly, lo, Sri Ramakrishna comes and says, well, eta Jogo Maya. This is Yoga Maya. Maya, the inscrutable power that deludes people, right? But yoga, when that Maya takes you towards God, that becomes a bridge to infinity. Sri Ramakrishna says, this is Yoga Maya. This will lead you to stay in the world. Keep your mind in the world again, not to fly off rather, right? In course of time, Sri Ramakrishna already depart from the world, has this burden now properly executed by his wife? Well, how it would be done, there were no clear laid down plan. As the events unfolded in 1897, Swami Vivekananda returned from America and England to India, right? In the country which was then under British rule, the feet of Swami Vivekananda rang a bell. It was as if the country as a whole stood up to greet him. Wherever he went, from the southern tip of the land through Calcutta up to Lahore, everywhere he was welcomed. Swamiji was intelligent enough to understand that this euphoria, the sudden optimism and enthusiasm would die down soon, right? And so, taking hold of this enthusiasm, on 1st May 1897, he established the Ramakrishna Mission. The full name was Ramakrishna Mission Association. And in that, in addition to the monastic members, the householders too were to play a prominent role. And somewhat strange in the Hindu scenario of the days, he made a full charter of what Ramakrishna Mission was supposed to do. In that very first meeting, a description of which is there by the book by Sharat Chandra Chakraborty, you can see the activities to be performed by the Ramakrishna Mission. In fact, the association was to have a meeting every Sunday. In those initial days, that would be the norm. And Vivekananda often would be present in those meetings, sometimes speaking, sometimes singing. Others would also join in. But now comes another phase of his life. In London, when he was there, he had met a young woman. Her name was Margaret Elizabeth Noble. She was a scholarly woman, barely 28 years of age at the time. But she had offered to serve India and offered herself to undertake all the privations for that purpose. Swamiji cautioned her again and again, right? Coming to India is not easy. Many of you who have gone there, you'll be knowing all the better, right? Right. And that too for staying for a long period, serving among the people there, among children. And her responsibility was educating the women. Because women by that time had gone parda, gone behind the veil. Lajja patavrite nityam, we read just now, right? But by that time, especially after the Islamic rule, probably Hinduism to regain or maintain its identity had protected women. The time had now come to bring them out. Swamiji strongly felt that for that he required an educated woman. And you require an outside force, and inside force wasn't enough. And he was strong on one point, that the education of the woman, raising of the woman should be done by women alone. There shouldn't be male interference in this, right? So Nivedita volunteered herself for the purpose. Swamiji again cautioned her, right? You see, if you go there to serve the women there, even the Europeans would be suspicious. Because after all, they were the rulers. Why should you come to serve the persons, the Indians who are being ruled? Number one. The other part, probably, which Nivedita faced later on, was even after starting the school, even the educated men of the locality would sometimes treat her as an outsider, right? So Europeans were not to be mixed with much. This was the idea. There was a peculiar term, mlecha. Mlecha means who is different, who is in terms of practices is inferior, right? Even a person could be devoid of wealth, but this artificial barrier prevented them to give their children to Nivedita. But overcoming all these barriers, Nivedita started the school, and for this she had the great benediction of the Holy Mother. Holy Mother was very fond of Nivedita. In fact, Swamiji with trepidation had sent Nivedita, Mrs. Oli Bull and Josephine MacLeod, the last two being Americans, to the Holy Mother at her residence in Bagh Bazaar. It was a test for him and fathers as well. Is Holy Mother willing to accept them? Because accepting these European women would be setting the door open for Nivedita to work among women. Because the Holy Mother is a Brahmin widow. A Brahmin widow has more restrictions on her movement. So even if a Brahmin widow could open her arms to the foreign ladies, the society would only be too willing to accept them as well. So Holy Mother during other periods had abided by all the observances of a widow, right? But in this period, in this time, she openly received these three women. Swamiji was overjoyed. In fact, this gave birth to a number of things. Firstly, as I said, Nivedita could launch into her task of opening the school. And starting of the school wasn't a small thing. I was just discussing with Braj Pranaji about the school. Others too joined in. Sister Christine was there. Sudhiradi came in. But what it did for the later generation was that a number of early students in later days of the school became the first nuns of the Sarada Mutt, which was established in 1954 on the occasion of the 100 years of the Holy Mother's birth, right? It was Swamiji's dream that you should have an independent monastery for women, which should have no governance of men whatsoever. This came true. And Nivedita's effort was the first seed which grew up over time, right? I'll just read this small reminiscence of Nivedita. It's so wonderful, right? I first realized this gift in Holy Mother. This gift means appreciating the positive points of other civilizations. On the occasion of a visit that she paid us in recent years, on this particular occasion, after going over our whole house, the mother and her party, mother means Sarada Devi, and her party, who had come to the school, the school for girls that Nivedita has set up. Okay, she was overjoyed whenever she would be overjoyed when the Holy Mother would come in. And this day, the party had come to the school. Expressed a desire to read in the chapel and hear something of the meaning of the Christian festival, right? You can understand, right? Sarada Devi didn't have formal education in the college or the high school. Even then, she understood that these were women who are sincere and holy. And so she decided to sympathize with their observances, or rather the observances which they had gone through from their childhood. And in Calcutta, Christian festivals was then a common thing because the British were then there by that time. This was followed by Easter music. I think barely the Easter time had gone here. And singing with a small French organ. And in the swiftness of her comprehension and the depth of her sympathy with these resurrection hymns. During the Easter, you have resurrection hymns, resurrection of Christ. Unimpeded by any foreignness or unfamiliarity in them, we saw, revealed for the first time, one of the most impressive aspects of the great religious culture of Sarada Devi. The same power is seen to a certain extent in all the women about her, but in her it has all the strength and certainty of some high and arduous form of scholarship. The same trait came out again one evening. This is still enjoyable, right? When in the midst of a little circle, Holy Mother asked Kristin and myself. Kristin was an American devotee of Swamiji who had also gone to Calcutta to help Nivedita or Margaret Noble in her education work. Kristin and myself to perform to her a European wedding. You can imagine the cultural difference, right? Sarada Devi asks her to show her the Christian wedding. With much fun and laughter, personating now the Christian Brahmin and again the bride and the bridegroom. Brahmin is the pastor who is conducting the marriage, and bride and bridegroom, they are impersonating, the two of them, that is Kristin and Nivedita. Okay, right? We complied, and we were neither of us prepared for the effect of the marriage vow. I say this is very remarkable what follows, right? Because today in society, especially in these parts of the world, often marriage is a difficult term, right? So in this situation, marriage vows, as it was originally designed, even in Christianity, gets the sanction of the Holy Mother. To quote, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, the two are saying together, the bride and the bridegroom. Till death do us part, were words that drew exclamations of delight from all about us. But none appreciated them as did the mother. Again and again she had them repeated to her. Oh, the dharmi words, righteous words. The righteous words, she said. In fact, as Mataji was taking me around the whole of the town today, me and Champak Babu, there were a number of marriage ceremonies going on today even, right? But these vows, we don't remember, right? We utter, then we forget probably. So, marriage even is a solemn thing, a religious act, a resolve to go along in life, right? So, Sarada Devi, by her own life and with her steadfast devotion to Sri Ramakrishna, in fact, epitomized what a proper marriage should be. But I would end this short lecture, and we can have some interactions, with another letter that Nivedita reads when Sarabul is at her deathbed, right? As I said, Sarabul, Josephine MacLeod and Nivedita had gone to the Holy Mother. And it is to their credit that they had this photo of the Holy Mother. In fact, Holy Mother had never before, earlier, get her photo by a male photographer, right? So when the photographer tried to click at the beginning, she immediately cast her eyes towards the ground. You can see such photo also, right? The second photo, it happened so that he probably thought that the photographer has now moved away. As she looked up, the photographer clicked again. So you have the second photo. And there's another photo with Nivedita by her side. It's a very loving photo, right? The mother and her daughter, as it were. So Sarabul, Josephine MacLeod and Nivedita became lifelong, very affectionately loved by the Holy Mother. Among them, Nivedita passed away in 1911, before the Holy Mother. Sarabul also passed away before the Holy Mother, probably in 1913. And Josephine MacLeod, of course, outlived all of them, right? Probably in 1949 she passed away at Hollywood. So this is a small letter that Nivedita writes from Boston. She had come to Boston to see Sarabul at her deathbed when she is very ill. The letter itself is a piece of poetry, I tell you. It's so wonderful. This morning early I went to church to pray for Sarah. All people there were thinking of Mary, of Jesus, and suddenly I thought of you, your dear face, and your loving look, and your white sari, and your bracelets. It was all there. And it seemed to me that yours was the presence that was to soothe and bless poor Sarah's, Saint Sarah's sick room. And do you know, I thought I had been very foolish to sit in your room at the evening service to Sri Ramakrishna trying to meditate. Why did I not understand that it was quite enough to be a little child at your dear feet? Dear mother, you are full of love. The next words are very important. But it is not a flushed and violent love like ours and like the world's, but a gentle peace that brings good to everyone and wishes ill to none. It is a golden radiance full of play. What a blessed Sunday that was a few months ago when I ran into you, the last thing before I went on the Ganges, and ran back to you for a moment as soon as I came back. I felt such a wonderful freedom in the blessing you gave me and in your welcome home, Bagh Bazaar home, right? In fact, Sarada Devi would request Nivedita to stay with her in the same house for a number of days so that others in society can easily accept her. Later on, Nivedita moved out to another house. These words, immortal words, I tell you. Next ones. Surely, you are the most wonderful thing of God, Sri Ramakrishna's own chalice of his love for the world, a token left with his children in these lonely days. And we should be very still and quiet before you, except indeed for a little fun. Surely, the wonderful things of God are all quiet, stealing unnoticed into our lives, the air and the sunlight, and the sweetness of gardens and of the Ganges. These are the silent things that are like you. Do send to poor Saint Sarah the mantle of your peace. So, Nivedita, I would say one of the foremost intellectuals of Ramakrishna Vivekananda literature. I was just discussing today. Many of her writings on Vivekananda have even proved to be prophetic, we would say. But such an intellectual, this was her assessment of Ma Sarada, right? And these were so correct. These words, you see, love without an upsurge of emotion. Often our emotions are like frothy, right? The sodas, right? Coming out of a cold drinks bottle. They quickly die out without giving effect to any work. But Sarada Devi, throughout her life, even after Nivedita's passing away, would again and again think of her. And add to it was the thing that although Swami Vivekananda had set up the Ramakrishna mission, which was primarily run by male members, but every Durga Puja has the invocation of Sarada Devi. All Durga Pujas have the sankalpa, that is the resolve. A Durga Puja needs a sankalpa at the beginning, That's made in the name of Sarada Devi. And till she was alive, any major decisions, whenever the monks would be in distress, unable to decide in those times under British rule, often it was Sarada Devi who would give the light, right? So, it was to her, about her, that I'm supposed to talk. Sometimes it so happens that under the blazing sun of Swami Vivekananda, or under the spiritual treasures of Sri Ramakrishna, we tend to forget Sarada Devi, right? In fact, some of our devotees, Champak Babu even probably was telling me a few days earlier, that in fact Sarada Devi, with her quiet behavior, quiet demeanors, often remains somewhat behind the scenes, as she was in those days. But such was her depth. Vireshwanji Maharaj, the 10th president of the order, had said, you see, earlier there was the idea that Sarada Devi's photos shouldn't be displayed much outside, because Sri Ramakrishna had said that she must remain behind veils. But after the centenary celebrations, that is after 1854, Sarada Devi's photo and her message went far and wide. He says in his lecture, in America and in the Western world, women especially feel religion all the more through Sarada Devi. This was a revelation for us. Naturally, by the vehicle of the human body, a woman understands the call of a woman all the more. So Sarada Devi is, as it were, the voice of Sri Ramakrishna. Through her, Sri Ramakrishna is able to call all and sundry to her. That calling of him from the roof of Dakshineshwar. Remember? Ore tora ke kothaye achish aay? Please come, where are you? He is calling. And he said, I see white men with fair hearts as well. I can see them. People didn't understand what he was saying, right? But these were prophetic words. The voice of Sri Ramakrishna was carried by Swamiji and by his able lieutenants in his later days. And even it's being carried now even, right? So we bow down to her and now keep the floor open for some questions and interactions. Thank you. The first one to put a question has more time, and later ones would have lesser times, right?
Tell us a little bit about your work in Malda.
Of course, that goes a little beyond the topic, but still. Acha. So, Malda is a somewhat, I'll say, little known place, because Krishna Prana Mataji candidly said, Maharaji, I didn't understand where Malda was. That was very candid on her. Well, Malda is in the middle part of the state of West Bengal, right? India in size is smaller than America, but you have a huge diversity in languages, right? There are probably 17 languages which are treated as official. The main language of the nation being Hindi, but in all these languages you have literature, in some of them very rich ones. Of course, you have heard that the name of Rabindranath Tagore. He had written in Bengali primarily. He had become a Nobel laureate. But other than Bengal also, other languages too had or has now very rich literature. So Malda is in the middle part, just adjacent to Bangladesh. So Malda had a fair amount of Islamic population as well. So going back to the historical part of it, actually, Calcutta is now the capital of Bengal or West Bengal. And because the Belur Math is there, devotees here, nuns of the convent too, would be knowing Calcutta all the more. But as you move from Calcutta northwards, halfway from the northern tip, you have this place Malda. And Malda was blessed by the appearance of Swami Premanandaji Maharaj, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. It was here that he uttered that wonderful story. The story goes like this, right? That when he had gone there to speak, and he was speaking in an open field. So Premanandaji, as his name signifies, prema, love. He was supposed to be an embodiment of love. Such was his nature. Such was his service to all and sundry. So people, as they saw him, they said that, well, you tell us something about prema, love. Then he said gravely, well, I'll tell you a story then. There was once a peddler of things moving around. He said, well, do you want to purchase this thing? I have prema with me, love, love, love. Anyone? So people came rushing. They said, what is the cost? Then this peddler said, it's somewhat costly. You require to give your head, right, for this. So that was this story. In order to love, you need to sacrifice. A mother sacrifices for her daughter or her son. Probably when the daughter and the son grows up, she doesn't remember all those days of caring. Because when we are very young, till the age of 5, our mind is not impressionable. We do not understand what the amount of care the mother had to take, right? Similarly, love always must be accommodated by sacrifice. So this is what the story said. The Malda center now has a temple, quite a big temple, with an image of Ramakrishna, and it has a high school with 1200 students. There are 4 more primary schools in different parts of the city, and there's a hostel with 90 boys. As I was telling Mataji's today, in India the type of service is very direct actually, because after independence, the country as it was being reconstructed, the government, some of its officials, again and again entreated the Ramakrishna mission also to join in. They helped them during those days with land, with fair amount of money as well. So that especially in this part of the country, that is Bengal, and then it went to other parts also, mission is very directly into different kinds of service, in different schools, colleges, universities, hospitals, etc. So Malda has primarily education service and other services also. Right, Mother? Thank you. But none to add in a word about the Holy Mother. I would expect some of the mothers are ladies to speak up with 1 or 2 comments at least, if not a question. Bhavamukha, right. Achha. Bhava means being absorbed in a thing, right? Bhava. Mukha here in this case means juncture, mouth, right? Juncture. Bhava Mukha, which comes in Sri Ramakrishna's life, you hear this word, is at the juncture of duality and non-duality. The incident happened thus, right? Actually, Sri Ramakrishna, after being initiated by Totapuri into the Advaitic practices, after a few days became absorbed in the deep Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa means, Vikalpa means substitute, Nirvikalpa means without a substitute, right? Philosophy says in this world we always live on duality, object and subject. Because there is duality, that is why we talk to others, we undertake an action. But when the object and the subject becomes one, right, then there can be no actions anymore, right? So Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the state where you have no substitution, no duality at all. So in that state, a person just remains like a log of wood, so to say. You remember that Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, that peculiar incident when the Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar, an atheist but a very sincere person, decides to check whether Sri Ramakrishna is really into Samadhi, right? And he goes up to Sri Ramakrishna, opens his eyelids and pokes his fingers there. Was it really a samadhi? Or is he in a state of dozing off or a coma? But Sri Ramakrishna has no any sense of the outside at all. The doctor probably doesn't figure out medically what has happened, but he understands that Sri Ramakrishna is sincere in what he is doing, right? Bhava mukha means staying on the borders of duality and this non-dual experience, right? So just see, when you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he would sometimes be in the samadhi, absorption, and then he would come back again, right? Suppose you go out of this auditorium hall and you stay in the middle and you can go out or come in, right? Normally, it's said in the Yoga Shastra that a person who is in the Nirvikalpa state for a longer period, his body cannot come back to this dual state of work again. It gives the example of dry leaves. Just as during the winter season, the dry leaves fall off. Similarly, this body also falls off because there is no necessity of work anymore. We undertake actions because we are driven by small or big desires, karma. But he becomes nishkama, beyond desires. So there is no necessity for work anymore. But even then, persons like this, they sometimes come back. Why? That's for the welfare of the world. Loka hitaya. Hita is good. Loka is persons. They come back for the sake of others. Buddha, Ramakrishna, they are not content with enjoying the wonderful mango fruits alone, as the story goes, right? They come back to share it with others. So they remain in bhava mukha at the juncture. From samadhi he can come back again and can have wonderful conversations with others. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is a joy to read, right? You can be upset with the heavy Sanskrit books, right? But Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is just like an easy reading, right? Even you can sleep and go on reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, right? This is what many of us we do. Many of our devotees also are habituated that they'll read a page from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. But you can't imagine a Sanskrit book being done thus, right? As soon as you open the pages, you again close and say, okay, it's enough for us, right? Okay, so that is, he remained in Bhava Mukha for us, right? Okay, anything else? Mataji, it's almost time, right? Yeah. Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been absolutely wonderful. Now we'll have Vespers.
Right.
Arati,
Thank you.
and after Arati 6:30, come down and we'll have potluck.
That's,
We send them to the convent.
so should we say Shanti Shanti and end?
Yeah.
That's, you can please join in, right? Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.